Coming today on Eagle Eyes on Tech, tariffs are affecting the tech world drastically. We'll get into details as to how exactly it's all going to affect you, including the fact that just about every laptop manufacturer is putting sales on hold. The Switch 2 has one huge missed opportunity in its construction, and a D&D monster is now real. All that and more coming up today on Eagle Eyes on Tech. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's swim. Go to ready. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. You know, I normally say I got a lot to talk about today. I'm not gonna lie, there actually isn't all that much to talk about because there really is just one topic. There is one topic that has consumed all of tech news, all of it, and it's pretty much the news topic that has engulfed everything. It's the T word. It's tariffs. It's consumed everything. Now, let's actually go into it. We're just gonna dive head first into the T word talk. All right. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around because we're at various stages of it, because depending on who you ask and how much people have paid attention to this, you're just going to assume everything is being tariffed. Every little thing that is coming into the United States is being tariffed. Everything from maple syrup to fresh water to our wildlife to our mooses to our Mises to our laptops to our iPhones. You would assume everything is being tariffed. That is not the case. All right. That's not the case. Let's actually go over the timeline though. All right. So first up, without really saying why, okay, the current administration puts tariffs on both Canada and Mexico. All right. Now we're going to go over this as apolitically as possible. Okay. I just want to state that right away. I should also just go ahead and just put out my own political stance on this. I think the tariffs, first and foremost, are a terrible idea. The economy here in the US is not in a good place. We just got through massive amounts of inflation. Everything is not looking great. All right. The economy needs to recover, and going to a trade war, which I get why the current administration is going to a trade war. I don't agree with the timing because everything's hurting right now. It is like going in and deciding to go into a fist fight at a bar when you already have a sprained arm. This is not the time to be doing this sort of thing. And from a political standpoint too, it's not going to be doing the current administration's political party any favors, because now it puts them in a situation where they were in the right with the economy by saying it needs to recover, and the previous administration was doing bad with it. And now it puts them in a situation where anything bad that happens to the economy, it's their fault because they just went ahead and put tariffs on everything. So in my opinion, I think it's stupid all around. It's bad for the people. It's bad for them politically. And it's the worst timing I think I've ever seen. That's where I stand on it. So, I mean, if it was up to me, would not. No. Nope. But I am not the current administration. You can argue whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll just tell you this right now. It's a good thing I'm not in the current administration. I do not know how to run a country. Just period. You can go ahead and argue that I can't be worse. I would be worse somehow. I don't know how, but I'd be worse. So that's where I stand on the whole thing. All right. So first, tariffs are put onto our northern and southern borders, or northern and southern neighbors, I should say. All right. The reason on their southern neighbors is pretty obvious. There is pressure for them to fix the border. On the north, it made no sense until you look at the fact that Canada has a whole bunch of tariffs against the US. Then tariffs started going out to just about every single country in the world. And you look at that and it starts becoming obvious as to why. It's because all of those countries have tariffs against the US. So the thought process here is pretty obvious. Put tariffs against those who have tariffs against us in hopes of getting those tariffs dropped. Thus trying to go ahead and encourage development here in the US for development of products to then increase exports, help the economy, etc., etc., etc. That is the clear goal. Now, here is where we currently stand. Many countries have in fact now come back to the current administration and are now negotiating. What are these negotiations going to include? We don't know yet. There's a lot of speculation as to what's going on with the negotiations. We don't know. It has, however, led to a 90-day suspension of all of these tariffs that were going out. So right now, none of the tariffs are in effect that were put on, except for one. There is one set of tariffs that are currently in place, and that is against China, who I want to remind you already had tariffs in place against the US. So the US then puts tariffs against China. China then raises tariffs against the US again. US raises tariffs against China, and it's been a back and forth pissing match. And China's then going ahead and saying, man, this whole thing is a joke. What is wrong with you? And just keeps on going. I hate to break it to you. You're both pissing in this pissing match. Nobody's hands are clean in this. So at this time, there are no additional tariffs in place except against China. And the tariffs are over 100%. I believe the current tariffs placed against China are somewhere in the bounds of 145%, and the tariffs against the US is 125%. Politically, this hurts China far more than it hurts us, because China imports virtually nothing from the US, and we import, I don't know, how much of my stuff on my desk alone says made in China? Yeah, just about every single consumer good in all of the US is made in China. So it hurts China and us pretty heavily. Fortunately, however, we import very little food or essential goods from China. So fortunately, it means your cost of living should not be affected that much. The key word is that much. There are still going to be some basic things that businesses have to go ahead and order. Like, for example, I know at my work, all of our hangers are manufactured over in China. So all of our hanger prices are going to double. It's a good thing I know we have like a stockpile of like 500 hangers. Good stuff. And fortunately, I know some of our stuff is actually made very locally, in fact. I believe Texas is actually where most of our plastic wrap is made. But you can kind of see how this affects everything. And the main reason why it's being talked about here on a tech podcast is because guess what comes out of China? Pretty much all of our consumer electronics. To some degree or another, pretty much every single laptop, router, you pick a thing, it's going to be made over in China, including a lot of those, as someone mentioned in chat, all those very strange off-brand fly-by-night companies that appear on Amazon. Those are definitely going to be affected by the tariffs. Honestly, here's a very lukewarm take that off-brand garbage can go ahead and get tariffed all at once. Like, no joke. I bought a vacuum from one of those like random brands. Guess what? They were gone in 2 days. And I have 3 broken vacuums. Like, they make the worst garbage. It is like actual garbage being manufactured. It is awful. I have a very, very, very low opinion of a lot of those face roll companies. But you have to keep in mind, even though those obvious face roll companies that are just making cheap stuff from China and shipping over, there are plenty of US or European brands that do have their manufacturing over in China that actually do make high quality goods that are now going to be affected by tariffs. By the way, remember how we said that the Switch 2 was going to be affected by the tariffs, and that Nintendo was going to go ahead and reevaluate the pricing of the Switch 2 based on the tariffs? Here's the fun part, okay? The Switch 2 is assembled and shipped out of Vietnam. Vietnam has already publicly said that they have been in negotiations with the US, and they are dropping all tariffs against the US in favor of the tariffs being dropped from the US against them. Unless Nintendo is going to be an opportunist, the Switch 2 is going to stay the same price. And yes, it's going to stay the same price. No, my original hope that the expected tariffs that we knew about for months before the announcement of the Switch 2 was not baked in the price. No, they actually were asking for $450 pre-tariff, which sigh. So on paper, we should be seeing the Switch 2 come back with no additional tariffs. If we do, I'm telling you right now, there's gonna be a lot of eyeballs looking over at Nintendo going, how? The blasted thing is shipping out of and assembled in Vietnam. There are no tariffs in effect against Vietnam, even after the 90-day hiatus is done. What are you doing, Nintendo? So we'll see. We'll see how that ends up going. Although, could you imagine if the Switch 2 actually was coming directly out of China after this pissing match? Let's actually run some calculations real quick, since we actually know what the tariff actually is on it. So we know we have a $450 price tag, and that is a 145% tariff, which means we have to go 2.45 because we have to include the 1. It'd be a $1,102.50 Switch 2. Look, Nintendo, you make some good games, but that's a hard pass for me. That is a hard pass. Fortunately, that's not what we're looking at. Also, that'd be on... Actually, wait. That would be on cost... Okay, it wouldn't be quite that high, because it would be based on the cost of the product being shipped in, which means it would be what the retailer would pay, which that price we don't know. So, yeah, no. No. Someone in chat said they wouldn't do that. Honestly, they'd do some kind of export goofiness by sending it to a different country before they send it to the States. You know, that's the funny thing is, that is how we first ended up. And this is actually a fun rabbit hole to drop down in, because I was wondering why so many people were concerned with the status of Vietnam when Nintendo first announced that they were going to hold off on pre-order sales in the US until they saw how the tariff thing was going down. Why were people so obsessed with Vietnam? It's because Nintendo did this before, because to dodge a significantly smaller tariff against China by a different administration, they had their stuff instead sent to Vietnam after being assembled to then be packaged and then shipped out of Vietnam, specifically to avoid a different tariff. Granted, a significantly less insane tariff. Now it's almost, what, 145%? Yeah, this whole situation is wild, and you can just see from that very quick rough math that is technically not correct, but still, why everything's kind of on hold here. Now again, this is a tech podcast. I already said where I kind of stand against tariffs. And for those who missed it, tariffs are bad. I would not have done it. We're not in a situation for it, but you did it anyway, so I gotta live with it now, don't I? I have a feeling that I have probably the coldest take possible on the tariff situation. But fortunately, it's nowhere near as bad. All because of, as we mentioned earlier, the 90-day tariff suspension, and that currently many countries are in talks about ending their tariffs to end the tariffs against them, and thus very quickly putting an end to this trade war, which... good. It's just China that's in a pissing match. And I'm gonna be blunt about it. China has way more to lose in this than we do. Now, with that also being said, while there is 145% tariff looking out there, there is also talks about this 145% tariff having an exception for smartphones and computers out of China. Ooh, actually, that's a good one. Where's my calculator? I have to know now. I think I closed it by accident. All right, the iPhone is $999.99. The cheapest iPhone Pro would be $2,449.78 before tax. So fortunately, there's going to be an exception for smartphones and computers. Now, people are saying that it is going to be temporary. Here's what I'd also say. Anything involving the word tariffs right now, especially with how quickly the current administration and China are just trying to piss as hard as they can, just assume that by the time I mention any sort of headline involving the T word, it is now different. 145%. You know what? Now it's 165%. Now it's gone. Now it's 200%. Now it's back to 145. Now it's temporarily exempting apples. Now it is including apples. Now it is only apples. And I don't mean the computer, I mean actual apples. Who even knows anymore? It is hard to say. And yep, sure enough, someone has in fact news has in fact come out that yes, in fact, the exemption for the Chinese tariffs that are exempting computers and smartphones is in fact a temporary restriction. And apparently the new update is that there are going to be tariffs that are going to be affecting silicon chips. Previously, that was a hard exemption. Now it is going to include that. There's a good chance by the time this podcast comes out on Monday, this is all going to be different as well. There is a very, very good chance of that. So what does this mean for the rest of us? I mean, here's what it's going to mean. I would just hold on to your money. If the price of something you want is close to the actual MSRP that you know is coming, by all means, go for it. I mean, heck, we already have official announcements from, say, Framework, that the new tariffs that have gone into effect, they are temporarily pausing all US sales. And originally this was just for the Framework Laptop 13, their baseline laptop. They have moved on and instead also removed a few other of their laptops too. It's just, what do you do with this? And man, I don't know. Just hold on. That's just all you can do. And it's not just Framework. Razer has also done the exact same thing. Its pricing and pre-order page for its new Razer Blade laptops that have the new RTX 5000 series chips have now been pulled from pre-order from US sites. And it's not just these more boutique vendors. All your big boys, HP, Dell, Acer that you completely forgot existed and is usually under a different name like Acer, and Lenovo have also suspended shipments for the next couple of weeks to the US as they're waiting for signs of some kind of stability to the market and some kind of knowledge of how much are they gonna have to pay in tariffs to ship their stuff out. Someone in chat said it's time to take a trip up to Canada to buy. You know, I joked about this last week and actually ran the numbers and came to about $100 ish, maybe about 75 with my car for how much it would take for a two-way trip to the closest Canadian Best Buy to get a Switch 2 just to avoid tariffs, and if it would be cheaper to avoid the tariffs that way. Which, if the tariffs actually did bring a $1,000 plus Switch to the market, 100% would be worth it. 100%. Here's the wild thing, though. Because so much of Canada's stuff still touches a US port, many ships are halting shipments to Canada as well, because they go ahead, drop their stuff off over at, say, Seattle first or some port there, and then make their way up to Canada to then get that shipment there. They just paused the whole shipment. I'm sorry, fellow Canadians. Whatever the heck this plan is accidentally screwing you. Don't look at me. I didn't do this. I hate it as much as you. If anything, I hate it more. Who would be more pissed? The Americans that got to go ahead and actually pay the inflated prices thanks to the tariffs, or a country like Canada who has now experienced a shortage of certain consumer goods, who had no say in any of this at all, that are now going to see their prices increase solely because there's going to be a supply drop. God, it's hard to say. Someone in chat said the tariffs affect Canada more than the US. No, the tariffs are definitely going to affect the US more than Canada, because all of the tariffs, again, all the tariffs against every other country except China have been suspended. So there's currently nothing between Canada and the US, unless Canada does something really stupid, which, you know what, in the political space, I wouldn't doubt that. Never underestimate that. But right now, the only tariff that's going to be hitting us in any sort of significant fashion is going to be consumer goods coming from China to the US. So no, right now, at this moment, the tariffs are going to hit the US way harder than they're going to hit Canada. That's like, it's not even close. And yeah, we still got this. We still have the fact that, like we said, this whole thing with the tariffs currently has the Switch 2 pre-order sales in all of North America suspended, as in both the US and Canada. Canada has nothing to do with the tariffs, other than the fact that, you know, there's some against them too, and they're being affected by it. Now again, the pricing on paper should not be affected. And in fact, before you ask, yes, the Nintendo Switch 2 will in fact launch before the tariffs resume. So there is no excuse for Nintendo to increase the price of the Switch 2 for launch. And actually, looking forward, there's no reason for them to increase it, period. Because there is in fact currently, as of this moment, a no tariffs agreement between the US and Vietnam, where the Switch 2 is coming out of. And Japan, for that fact. So that is where everything stands. Fortunately, at this time, the average American citizen's cost of living for basic needs should not increase, because there is going to be no tariffs on, say, imported food or imported fuels or anything of that matter, as tariffs have been suspended. But tariffs on many consumer goods, specifically anything made in China, will most likely go up. There is some exceptions currently for smartphones, desktops, and laptops, but many of those same companies are also halting sales in the US, waiting for all the dust to settle so they can see what is going on. So while consumer electronics may not be affected by tariffs, the supply is going to be lower because of this halting to see what the heck is going on in the tariff space. That is currently where everything stands. Is that where it's going to stand by Monday when this podcast comes out? I don't know. There's a decent chance everything I just said will be completely invalidated by Monday at noon when this podcast comes out. It is nearly impossible for anyone to say. Isn't that great? I mean, heck, we got an update in the middle of all of this saying like, oh, hey, by the way, that news about smartphones being exempt from the tariffs, yeah, that has been confirmed to be temporary now. Rip. So that's where we stand right now. And that is what we're looking at with the wonderful world of the tariffs. And this concludes the rare moment where Eagle Eyes on Tech actually talks about current political events. Let's take a break from that, and when we come back, let's talk about something not political, like flaws in the Switch 2. Don't go anywhere. We will be back. Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. I'm Eagle Falcon. Now, while the Switch 2 is expected not to be affected by the tariffs, that is currently what we're expecting at this moment. I want to stress that at this moment, at the time of recording, we're not expecting that. All right. What we can show you, however, is what other people are talking about the Switch 2. And currently the only people who have access to the Switch 2 are developers. Oh wait, no, I'm not Balmer. Who are going ahead and saying that, hey, the Switch 2, you know, that little portable console, that thing that is the successor to one of the most underpowered consoles that ever existed. Dude, the power behind the Switch 2 looks really good. In fact, developers are saying that they are extremely happy with the amount of performance they're getting out of the Switch 2, which is a welcome change of pace considering the fact that the Switch 1 was already in some cases weaker than the Wii U it replaced. So to see this, it's good stuff. Now, of course, the question is going to be, how well can developers take advantage of it? Because as we've already seen with some developers of famous Pokemon games, you can go ahead and give them all the capability in the world, but if they don't optimize correctly for the hardware, the game is still going to perform like, well, molasses sinking in quicksand. So all we can do is hope that all the third-party developers who do have access to the Switch 2 are able to optimize it extremely well. Now, this all being said, I do gotta mention, some developers have said that even though the Switch 1 is backwards compatible, the way they are achieving backwards compatibility is based on, get this, a cross between emulation and built-in hardware. Yeah, the difference between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 is actually so great that the Switch 2 cannot run Switch 1 games natively. Emulation is required, and there are well over 100 games that just will not function properly on the Switch 2, despite the fact they function perfectly fine on the Switch 1. So what is that going to mean? Well, it means that if you do have a Switch 1, might not want to sell it. Granted, I don't think you'd get a whole lot for it right now anyway, just because you never know if you want to go back and play some of those old games, especially since right off the bat, the Switch 2 is not going to have a whole lot yet, especially if games cost $100. But, you know, I digress. But in any case, hearing that the devs are extremely happy with the performance of the Switch 2 is fantastic news. You know what's not fantastic news? It's the fact that the Switch 2 is not going to use Hall effect joysticks. They are going to use, well, we don't know exactly what yet, but early signs point to using the exact same joystick technology as the Switch 1. That's not a good sign. No matter how you slice or dice it, it does mean that there is a good chance that stick drift will plague the Switch 2. And considering the fact that all the accessories for the Switch 2 are more expensive than the Switch 1, it's not good for the longevity of the Switch 2. And I mean, I hate to be the one to say it, but you know, Nintendo kind of does have an incentive to make sure you keep buying replacement Joy-Cons, you know? I don't want to be the one to go ahead and put the tinfoil planned obsolescence, planned failure cap on, but there is a chance that is, in fact, what is exactly calculated. I want that to not be the case. I want to believe that they did, in fact, improve the Switch 2 Joy-Cons in some way, but there's a good chance they didn't. Honestly, as far as the Switch 2 controllers go, or the Joy-Cons, I am still surprised that one of the primary connecting features just appears to be a mildly reinforced PCB board with gold contacts that connects into a slot inside the Joy-Con. I am stunned they used that will most likely break off at some point rather than just using pogo pins. That to me is going to be one of the more interesting points of failure of the Switch 2. Are we going to see that fail? Right? If that does fail, it's not the end of the world. It can still just be, you just carry around a Pro controller and you're now Joy-Con-less Switch 2. It isn't. You do have options if it breaks, at least. I don't want to think that sort of way, but that is, in fact, an option out there. We'll only know once the Switch 2 is actually out in a couple months. News is also out that the first pre-order invitations in the US have, in fact, gone out. If you did not get one, well, guess what? You're not cool enough. Now, most of these were, in fact, actually, wait a minute. I'm sorry. The first batch of Switch 2 pre-orders have not, in fact, gone out. They will be going out starting on May 8th, 2025. That is, in fact, the current plan for these sort of things. Now, it's not like if you get one, you have to pre-order. It is just your opportunity to pre-order. The way Nintendo is doing this to try and minimize as much scalping as possible is that they are making sure that only dedicated gamers that have like 50 hours of playtime on their Switch 2, or on their Switch 1, I should say, and have I want to say I can't remember which Nintendo Online subscription. I can't remember if it's the cheaper one or the more expensive one that you have to get priority on it. Which, I'm not going to lie, the whole thing kind of feels like pay to play. But I mean, you're also pre-ordering a console, so you're already kind of paying to play. So you're in a weird spot. On one hand, it feels greedy AF, but how else are you going to make sure that it's not just greedy scalpers getting in on this? I honestly don't know. I really, really don't. For now, though, all we can do is wait and see exactly how this goes down. Now, that's all I've got for Nintendo. However, there's some other news out there right now in the computer world. Mostly with the fact that AMD has pulled a little AMD on you. There are brand new AMD CPUs out there. These are the AMD Ryzen 8000 series for laptops. This is actually really nice because you get anywhere from 8 to 16 laptop cores. That can be anywhere from 45 to 75 watts on the CPU for these monstrous powerhouse mobile workstation / gaming laptop processors. Now, I am unsure whether these actually have GPUs in them. I want to say these do not. That these are, in fact, just CPUs. In fact, yeah, these are, in fact, just CPUs. They do have to be paired with a discrete GPU. But here's what's infuriating about these 8000 series CPUs. They're based on last-gen architecture. So once again, AMD puts out brand new products that are numbered like brand new products, numbered like they are, in fact, a brand new architecture, when in fact they are not. They get so close to just being consumer friendly. They get just so close to just being good guy AMD. And then they got to go and do stuff like this that make us go, oh yeah, that's right. AMD kind of plays that whole deceptive marketing thing too, like a lot. So yeah, before you get a laptop, I strongly recommend getting the exact part number of the CPU. Look up the exact specs of that CPU and exactly what generation it is, because you never know half the time, because Intel and AMD both keep playing this game, and it is just absolutely infuriating. Now, I'm not saying these are going to be bad buys. I'm just saying they may not be what you think they are. And if they're priced like brand new, latest and greatest technology, but they're not, you know, it's important to know that. So always be aware. Just like you should be aware of what shenanigans NVIDIA is pulling, because we are in fact looking at not one, but two different GeForce RTX 5060 Ti's being released. Yep, that's right. NVIDIA is doing that nonsense again, but this time it's far more important than normal. There is going to be an RTX 5060 Ti 8GB variant and an RTX 5060 Ti 16GB variant. The 16GB variant is going to cost $429 for a fairly decent functional GPU that's a little overpriced. And the other one, the RTX Ti, or the 5060 Ti 8GB variant, is going to be $380 for a card that is already dead on arrival. Oh, I'm sorry. What, you don't think the card is dead on arrival? Let me tell you something here real quick. All right. If you're playing modern games at anything other than 1080p, you need more than 8GB of VRAM. The testers and the reviewers out there have already actively proven again and again and again at 1440p and 4K, only 8GB on certain titles causes the game to not function at all. It needs that extra RAM. And the fact that NVIDIA is doing this nonsense where they're trying to go ahead and pitch out, oh, hey, you know, it's plenty of RAM. Hey, we got AI. You don't need as much RAM with AI. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's not. You need you need more RAM to be at this. And I'm not gonna lie. If I was spending close to $400 and I can't even power a 1440p monitor with modern titles, what am I doing? Oh, well, NVIDIA had to cut the RAM down because otherwise you heathens are going to go ahead and use the GPU for AI. So having only 8GB means that it's for gamers. It's better to have lower memory since you don't need all that. Yes, we do. The 5060 Ti 8GB variant is an insult, and it is an e-waste card. NVIDIA is actually shipping out e-waste. And considering the fact they can't even keep all the other cards in stock, they really don't have the capacity to afford shipping out actual e-waste. I swear, if it weren't for the fact that AI-based data centers are run by a bunch of actual morons, NVIDIA would be a sunk company. They're treating their professional users like idiots by shipping out cards with defective frickin' power solutions that would never fly in a workstation environment in a million years, but they're trying to force it out anyway. They are shipping out cards with incorrect specs. They are shipping out defective cards. They are shipping out defective power delivery methods. And now they're shipping out cards with not enough RAM to do basic functionality. I mean it when I say it. If it weren't for the data center market and the fact that just by having this monopoly that they do on AI cards, NVIDIA's stock price would be in a nosedive. That nonsense with enterprise AI data centers is the only thing making line go up. Literally the only thing. Because they are failing everything else. Someone in chat said, wouldn't be surprised if it's impossible for NVIDIA to make RAM bigger. If it's impossible for them to make RAM bigger, why are they selling a 16 gig variant? If it's impossible for them to make the RAM bigger, why are they selling Quadro cards that have 3 times the RAM of their GeForce counterparts? If it was impossible for NVIDIA to make RAM bigger, why can AMD do it? like the Quadro cards being the exact same board design as the GeForce cards, being on that tiny little mid PCB and having double to triple the RAM of their GeForce counterparts makes this whole RAM argument clearly a sign that they just want the AI people to go ahead and buy either the Quadro cards, which I still cannot believe they are designing the Quadro cards with that defective power delivery system. That is insane to me. Or to go ahead and buy a data center solution. Not to mention the missing ROPs. Well, we'll just have to see how NVIDIA messes this up further, because, man, I don't think they've had a single 5000 series card launch that didn't have some kind of massive problem. And AMD has a funny problem. It's still a problem, but it's a funny problem. Some enthusiasts found a way to make a RX 9070 into an RX 9070 XT via a BIOS update. Now, flashing the BIOS on these cards is actually way harder than it was in years prior, and the performance is not exactly the same as the XT counterpart, but it's really close. And the card does in fact think afterwards that it is an XT and is in fact clocking up higher as though it were an XT. It just is what it is. It actually will go ahead and think this is a better card than it is. And the funny thing is that we've already seen this sort of thing on previous cards. Here's a funny one for you. In the data center world, there are two kinds of GPUs. Okay? From long, long ago, there's an NVIDIA grid card and NVIDIA Tesla card. Both of these cards are using the exact same GPU. Okay? This is a while back. This is the Pascal era. And here's what's wild about them. The only difference between the grid card, which is supposed to be a cloud gaming card, and the Tesla card, which is supposed to be a GPU compute card, I'm not even kidding, is one resistor. If you remove or add this resistor in one spot on the board, the card will change itself either to a grid card or to a Tesla card based on whether that resistor is there or not. And the difference is the way it clocks itself, the way it commands power, and far more importantly, the way the card registers a display. The Tesla card, being a compute card, will say there's no display connected. And there's no video out on these, by the way. I have a grid card over on the shelf. It's just vent on the back. There's nowhere to plug in a monitor. The Tesla card's the same way. There's no I/O on the back. But if you take away this resistor and turn the Tesla card into a grid card, all of a sudden, each of the two GPUs on it believes there's a 4K monitor hooked up that is non-existent, which I'm not going to lie, is really, really funny, especially in the home lab situation or in the home lab environment, where having that non-existent monitor is actually really helpful in virtualization. You're not quite getting that level of improvement with a slight modification to the card, but it has that same sort of error in it, which, not gonna lie, is still really, really funny, at least to me. But there you go. One little tweak and a little bit more performance you can get out of one card before you even overclock it. I'm willing to bet, though, if you do try to overclock it with that BIOS update, it is going to crash way more often. There's just no way, because the shader counts and the stream core count is different between the two. No, well, if you can pull it off, you can pull it off. Go for it. Meanwhile, though, over in China's trying to go ahead and create a new proprietary connector. This new proprietary connector is supposed to be basically, in another word, the Omniport. This one port is going to be capable of 8K HDMI DisplayPort, as well as 192 gigabits per second bandwidth, and 480 watts of power delivered over a single connection. And this one port has the most amazing name ever. It's the Hakapika. It is going to be shaped very similar to USB-C, except wider, and doesn't just roll off. How are you even supposed to pronounce this? HKEPC. But you know, it is currently being made into a standard over in China. It's hard to say whether this is going to make it over to other parts of the world, considering the fact that China is not exactly really playing ball with other nations right now. It's hard to say how it's going to catch on. In fact, it's far. I'll just be honest here. All right. The capabilities of this connector, they're interesting. It has a lot of potential, but I don't see it catching on. I think it's far more likely that a more globally recognized standard maker creates something that's comparable, like say Thunderbolt 5, whatever that ends up being, and that ends up catching on more with the same kinds of capabilities, rather than trying to go ahead and convince everyone to use a brand new port style. I mean, look how often Apple trying to force everyone to use a new port works. Hey, Apple, how did getting everyone to switch to USB-C work for everything? No, we still rioted and still demand standard USB for a lot of things. I mean, you tried. Ooh, how about back in the old days where you tried to get everyone to use FireWire? Remember that? Remember FireWire? Yeah. Good luck, China. I just don't see it working out. I just see it going the same way as FireWire. Kind of like how I think this new feature from Microsoft is also going to go the way of FireWire. Ladies and gentlemen, Windows Recall is finally being pushed out. Except they are making it so it is disabled by default and that it is opt-in only. You also need to have a Copilot Plus PC. So if you are a troglodyte that is using a older PC that is not Copilot Plus compatible, you have nothing to worry about. God, could you imagine being some kind of weirdo that is using a non-AI capable PC? God, what are you, a dinosaur? Not wanting to go ahead and utilize AI in 2025? It's okay. It's okay. Workstation I'm keeping alive from that was originally built in 2014. You still got plenty of life in you. So yeah, Recall is being rolled out. It's still as bad as people said. It's still just as bad as we all expected, but it's opt-in. It's not going to function until Microsoft forces it on you. And quite frankly, I would rather switch to Linux before I install this sort of thing on it. I still hate it. But Microsoft pretty much rolled this out in the best way. I take that back. Microsoft rolled this out in the second best way they could. It being off by default and opt-in only is the second best way it could have rolled out. Do you know what the best way it could have rolled out was? The best way this could have rolled out, if it rolled into the trash! That's the only other way this could have rolled out better. If it rolled out, not at all. Someone in chat says they doubt they'll force recall only because it would be too resource intensive for lower end PCs. The thing is that's why they are forcing it on Copilot Plus PCs only. Because Copilot Plus PCs have to have a CPU with AI processing in it. It has to have it. If it doesn't, you're not going to get this feature. So for those of you who went and bought that $200 HP I told you not to get because it's too terrible a piece of garbage, good news, you're immune to this. You still shouldn't have bought that. Don't buy a brand new $200 PC. I will beat you with this mug. I beat you with the laptop, but this mug is going to survive more than your $200 cheapo laptop that has the processing power of a deck of playing cards. Oh well, good luck, all of you Copilot Plus people. Good luck. Universal Studios, shifting gears wildly, is working on a new exhibit based on the hit movie How to Train Your Dragon. And one of the things it's going to showcase when it launches, get this, is an actual robot dragon that comes from Boston Dynamics, which we can actually go ahead and see based on its movements. It is clearly a Boston Dynamics robot inside a costume, which, by the way, might be the coolest use of the Boston Dynamics robot dog that I have seen in a long, long time. Like, this is actually legitimately cool. And I'm not gonna lie, very, very, very in favor of this, which now the video will not replay. Sigh. So yeah, I mean, that's a cool little thing that Universal Studios is working on, and quite frankly, good on it. Hopefully, this adorable dragon lasts long enough to be enjoyed by all, and also doesn't gain sentience to then go ahead and ruin us all and everyone as we begin as the robot overlords that are now dragons take over the world. But you know, if that doesn't get you, how about this one? In the tease, I said that a monster from Dungeons and Dragons is now real. So, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the last burb, the last story of the day, the weirdest story of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, the dire wolf is now back from extinction. I am serious. A genetics lab that goes by the name Colossal Biosciences claims that by using long extinct dire wolf DNA, they have brought back from extinction pups from the dire wolf. 1 female, 2 males. I'm trying to actually quickly find their names now. I know the males are, oh, here we go. Romulus, Remus, and the female Khaleesi? I think so that's pronounced. Ladies and gentlemen, the dire wolf is back, and it is based on Game of Thrones. Now, I have a couple of questions. The first question, of course, is why? Now, I know the answer is going to be why not, but I still have to ask the question, why? Which then brings me to my follow-up question, what's your game? Like, what ecosystem are they going to be released back into? Is the reintroduction of dire wolves after who knows how long going to affect the ecosystem of wherever they're released? Now, I'm sure these are all questions that are being asked and actually answered, and it's near impossible right now to find the answers because everyone is just looking and going, oh my god, they're dire wolf pups. Oh, they're so adorable. I want to give it belly wubs. That is pretty much all the talk you're going to get out of the dire wolves. And I just want to know, how much EXP are they worth? And will they drop a magic fire ring as they used to back in my video games? Folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Eagle Eyes on Tech. Thank you so much for listening, and I do encourage you to check out my other works over at twitch.tv/EagleFalcon and youtube.com/EagleFalcon. Take care, and hopefully I'll see you then. See you next time. Bye-bye. Now, a lot of people in the chat are going, all right, what's going to be next? Are we going to go ahead and create cat girls? What species are we going to unextinct next? Oh, no. You aren't seeing the big picture. All right. First, they wanted to see if they could bring back the woolly mammoth. They created a woolly mouse, right? All right. So we already got one D&D creature created again. We now got direwolves back, right? There's one of two directions we can go. Okay. The next step is either going to be bugbears, or we start making the turn over to cat girls and we bring back into this world Hollow the Wise Wolf. I'm telling you, that's clearly the direction we're going. Obviously. How can we not see it coming?